facing depression, and people are talking about, oh my God, it's a bad problem running rampant. And here's the reason why it's running rampant.
Assume, if you will, that what you knew about the Season 9 finale reunion was a fabrication. Marsau Scott let us say it's not the version you want to hear. He just dropped some huge truth bombs on what exactly occurred with Carlos King. This is the true tale they didn't want you to know. Stunning backstage drama, violent confrontations, and a power play that may transform everything. What then is the truth, and why is Carlos in the heart of the storm? Get ready, because we are going to expose everything. Fans have been talking for weeks about the Love and Marriage Huntsville Season 9 reunion. However, behind the scenes, the events are considerably more combustible than what broadcast. Famous for his composure despite even the most nasty situations, Marsau Scott has now gone forward, and his admissions are radically overturning the tale. Claims Marsau isn't your ordinary reality TV drama. What happened on at the reunion was under control, managed, and focused on Carlos King personally. Yet why Carlos needs to gain anything by directing the narrative line in a certain direction? More crucial still, what does he have to hide? We are delving deeply into the startling assertions made by Marsau in this video, dissecting the invisible power struggles and revealing why viewers are now demanding Carlos to leave the show completely. Trust me, if you have seen drama elsewhere, this is on still another level. Life is good, God is good, alright. So in case you missed the other live earlier, I need a bag, so I had to sew in real life. In real life, I always phone Marlo, okay? I always call Marlo when I'm out shopping because she is my person, so you know you'll get a chance to see who I am in my actual life, not something you read about. Keep tuned, as we will be analyzing every stunning detail. For years, among the most contentious yet level-headed individuals on Love and Marriage Huntsville has been Marsau Scott. He has frequently been meticulous, selecting his words carefully, but this time he is not holding back. During a recent chat, while some have participated in public feuds and social media conflicts, Marsau validated what many long-standing fans have long assumed: Season 9 reunion was intended not merely dramatic. Carlos King, he alleged, personally assisted to molded the tale, selected which exchanges received broadcast, and even claimed to have instructed some of the performers on what to say. Marsau laid it all out, not just hinted at manipulation. He said that important events were deleted in order to safeguard particular individuals. Although what was shown left some utterly blindsided, he also made it abundantly evident that tensions behind the scenes were at an all-time high. Some cast members were even threatening to leave the set. The most shocking discovery Marsau made was that Carlos has a personal agenda regarding who wins and who loses in the perspective of the audience. Yet why would a producer get so involved? Carlos wins from suppressing certain storylines while promoting others. Why are people now worrying whether his involvement has gone too far? Marsau's statements were more than simply a call to action. They were a warning that what viewers see on their TVs is just half the reality, and should his allegations prove correct, Carlos King may have finally pushed one of the top players in the game too far. But exactly what did Marcus say that led the internet to be in a frenzy, and how did Carlos reply? Remain with us, because from here things are only getting messier. While the Love and Marriage Huntsville Season 9 reunion was already expected to be dramatic, nobody could have predicted how disorderly things would get behind the scenes. Usually known for his keen sense of humor and DA handling of conflict, Marsau Scott is now revealing shockingly accurate information that might upend the very basis of the show. Viewers have speculated for years that Carlos King, renowned reality TV producer and mastermind behind some of the most discussed unscripted events, might be guiding the plot in less than fair ways. Now Marsau is verifying what many have suspected: Carlos is playing favorites, not just generating. Marsau alleges that the reunion session was carefully monitored, with Carlos reportedly steering talks away from themes that would injure certain cast members and stressing tales that would propel drama. And the greatest surprise, Marsau stated that Carlos directly engaged in what was being discussed, even going so far as to provide lines to cast members to mold the plot line. But here's where it gets even wilder. Not everyone was happy to play along. Many of the cast members, according to Marsau, were gradually agitated when they learned that vital points of reference were being ignored or redirected. Some even sought to push back. Yet Marsau states Carlos' evident ly proved he was in charge. This degree of intervention asks major issues: who is really in control of the narratives if Carlos is modifying them to suit individual people? Is everything being meticulously picked for maximum impact, or are cast members truly free to reveal their truth? The most shocking discovery, however, is that Marsau hinted at something even more disturbing. He mentioned that Carlos's participation is personal rather than only For generating drama, Meryl feels certain individuals have been sheltered for a reason, while others have been thrown under the bus. Some sources close to the show have even murmured that there are off-cam alliances at work. Some people who have positioned themselves favorably with Carlos, ensuring that their image stays clear. Others fall, and Meryl claims this has been going on for years. Season 9 marked the turning point. Things descended even darker as tensions grew right there on set. Cast members began to challenge the way things were being done. Carlo is only presenting what they saw because they believe things are being done. At one point, it got so hot that sources claimed security had to intervene to keep the situation under control. Now, the main question is who was truly at the center of the dispute, and did Carlos finally push his cast too far? Although Marcel's disclosures have already set social media ablaze, there is still much more to examine. Who was sheltered, what precise events were omitted, and most crucially, will these explosive allegations impact the path of the program? As the love and marriage Huntsville Season 9 reunion recording preceded, the narrative is barely getting started. The tension in the room got insufferable. Get ready. Not only did Marsau Scott sense something was wrong, but numerous other cast members were growing more and more annoyed with what was going on behind the scenes. Sources stated that the time cameras began rolling, it was apparent that this was not a raw and unadorned discussion. Rather, it was a well-planned event with Carlos King supposedly put the strings. Renowned for his strategic thinking and business sense, Marcel had been observing closely as Carlos apparently controlled the direction and speed of the exchange. He says that whenever someone tried to bring up some delicate subjects, especially those involving Carlos's alleged involvement in the personal life of the cast, the conversation was immediately shut down. Either the issue was dismissed, diverted, or in some cases, people were flatly cut off mid-sentence, but Carlos was terrified of what exactly he was trying to cover. What Mauro said, Carlos has been keeping some cast members under protection for years to guarantee their stories remain positive. Others are tossed into the flames for ratings. Reality TV is obviously based on drama, but this time it seemed less about the inherent conflicts between cast members and more about a well-crafted narrative being pushed forward. Sources claim Melody Holt herself sought to intervene at one point, hoping to clear the air regarding recurring suspicions, but instead her statements appeared to be distorted to suit a specific narrative rather than allow her speak honestly. Melody, a fan favorite who had been through some of the most reported hardships on the show, wasn't going to just sit back and take it. Her patience had obviously worn thin, and for the first time we saw her rebuffing the machine that had for so long run the course of the show. This was a power struggle, not only another reunion. The conflict was so strong that at one point several cast members engaged in furious arguments, not only with each other, but also with Proto. Mauro added that sometimes cast members were specifically encouraged to remain in their lane and pay attention to their respective storylines. Carlos wanted everyone locked into their allocated parts, but the cast was not reacting as requested. Another prominent actor on the program, Kimmy Scott, supposedly was plainly upset. She has always been one to maintain cool, but even she could not overlook the obvious control being applied over the conversation. Sources claim that Kimmy questioned why some problems were being avoided while others were being exploited for ratings, so highlighting the hypocrisy of the circumstances. The actual bombshell dropped then. Mauro hinted that behind closed doors there were allegedly discussions whereby some cast members were promised that some themes would never see the light of day. But those promises were broken when the cameras started rolling. Carlos seemed to be actively trying to pit people against each other, so fueling current tensions while keeping his favorites in clear sight instead of maintaining things balanced. The irritation at this point became almost boiling. Sources close to production claimed that the tension got so out of control that security had to be on standby. While no physical altercations occurred, the verbal exchanges were strong enough that producers had to stop filming multiple times just to regain control of the room. Here's where it gets even more messy. Certain cast members supposedly won't resume shooting unless adjustments are applied straight away. Did you hear that correctly? Cast members were candidly questioning the way the reunion was being run. For the first time in the history of the show, they were challenging the very basis of the show's production and whether Carlos King personally had gone too far. Not only each other, What does this imply, though, for the course of Love and Marriage Huntsville? Could we see a significant cast change? Most importantly, will Carlos King at last answerability for the claimed backstage manipulation? One thing is clear: this season 9 reunion is a full-on struggle for control of the truth, not only a clash between cast members. By the looks of things, Marsau Scott is ready to expose everything. It was evident as the chaos of the reunion progressed that Carlos King was actively developing the plot right in front of the cameras. Not only the producer behind the scenes and the cast had enough. Not only was Marsau Scott speaking out, other cast members began to pick on the subtlety, but Carlos was clearly guiding the discussion whenever someone tried to bring up behind the scenes choices or call out production flaws. They were either ignored, brushed off, or redirected. The room was thick with frustration, and the energy had changed from a straightforward reunion conversation to a full-fledged confrontation on the very integrity of the program. An insider once said that Melody Holt herself chose to stop participating in the charade. She had been through too much public divorce business and struggles and personal betrayals to sit back and let someone else control how she was presented. She turned directly toward Carlos and reportedly said something that stunned everyone. "Should we be speaking the truth? Let us state everything." That comment set off a reaction right away. The room sucked out the air. Years of conflict between Melody and Carlos had been building, but right now, in front of the cameras, it was about to explode. Melody was tackling the whole system of favoritism and manipulation running the show for seasons, not just Carlos's selective narrative. Long-standing allegations among fans that certain cast members get greater protection than others appear to be eventually supported, and she wasn't alone. Kimmy Scott, who had always been rather quiet, seemed clearly bored. She turned to Carlos and apparently asked why some of the cast members were continually dropped under the bus. She noted that although some people seemed unaffected by controversy, Melody, Marsau, or even herself's personal affairs would become a major plot point, but when it came to others, the conversation would miraculously turn elsewhere. Years of this were breaking points. Drama has been the lifeblood of reality TV, but what happens when the cast cease playing in line, when they begin to revolt against the same person controlling the strings? Sources say Carlos was clearly taken aback. This was not the reunion he had intended. He had expected emotional responses, heated debates, and dramatic moments, but what he had not anticipated was the cast turning on him. Then the most startling event of the evening occurred. Marsau Scott, who had been clinging to something significant, at last dropped the bombshell. Turning to Carlos, he reportedly asked, "Why don't you tell them what you told us off camera? Tell them why you're especially shielding some particular individuals." The chamber became quiet. Carlos's face reportedly dropped. Nobody knew exactly what Marsau was referring to, but his behavior said it all. What was he hiding? Something deeper was underway behind the scenes that hadn't yet been revealed. Theories began to fly. Was it about some of the cast members receiving separate contracts from others? Was it concerning who really monitored the editing procedure? Alternatively, was it something lot more grand, something that would upend the entire franchise? The vitality in the room had entirely changed. This was a standoff for the first time in the annals of Love and Marriage, not only a reunion. One thing is certain: the truth is beginning to come out. Thus, the cast of Huntsville was collectively pushing back against Carlos King's control. The future of the story is yet unknown following Marsau's explosive revelation. The reunion's whole vibe changed. This was a direct challenge to the very basis of Love and Marriage. Not only cast members debating their personal drama anymore, the hub of all was Huntsville and Carlos King. It seemed for the first time as if the cast had decided that enough was enough. The battle in the room addressed power control and the behind-the-scenes manipulation rather than merely personal betrayals or relationships gone bad. Carlos had earned his reputation as a maestro of reality TV, but now his own cast was showing faults in his empire. Carlos was taken aback. Did he simply come across exposed? Carlos, who has always taken great satisfaction in being the man behind the scenes, suddenly found himself in the hot seat, and for once he lacked a planned exit. The cast demanded honest, unvarnished responses, and he was unable to deflect quickly enough. Marsau's comment had rippled through the whole set. Some cast members sat in shocked quiet. Would he deny it? Would he admit to playing favorites? Or would he do what he does best, spin the circumstances to his advantage? According to insiders, others watched Carlos, directly waiting for him to respond. Carlos halted before speaking, a rare moment of uncertainty from a guy who usually appears to have the upper hand. Melody, who had been intently observing Carlos, reportedly moved closer at that time and said, "So are you going to inform them, or should I burst?" The area exploded. The calm earlier cast members were now excited, conversing among themselves whispers Melody knew Carlos was so desperate to keep secret the show was set up from the beginning with a hidden agenda. Fans have speculated for years that Carlos has shielded some cast members while throwing others under the bus if the reunion was proving anything. This wasn't only a conspiracy theory, it was happening in real time. A few of the cast members regularly had their most personal terrible events turned into narratives. Others seemed to walk away unharmed no matter how much drama surrounded them. Now the truth was starting to show itself. According to a source close to production, some cast members supposedly got storyline protection depending on their relationship with Carlos. Some stars thus had the power to veto specific scenes cut off, discussions they didn't want on broadcast, and even affect the editing process. Others, like Melody, lacked such protection as well. And that's not all. There are rumors that Carlos had instructed some cast members on what to say before cameras started to roll, though it meant bending the truth. He knew what narratives he wanted to challenge and reportedly made sure they unfolded exactly as intended. Melody is no longer holding back. One thing Melody's fans are aware of is her unflinching nature. She has gone through a messy public divorce, countless betrayals, and continuous show scrutiny, but she has stayed strong, choosing to recover her narrative and stand in her truth through all. People listened, therefore, when she spoke at the reunion. She apparently said the show was supposed to be about successful Black entrepreneurs uplifting each other, but you turned it into a circus, and now you don't even have control over the chaos you created. She looked Carlos dead in the eyes. MICR. Carlos clearly felt disturbed. Melody wasn't done. As the man who had spent years overseeing every element of the show watched it fall apart before him, she turned to the audience, to the supporters of her through all, and she made one very clear point: I'm done allowing someone else to tell my story. The audience exploded. The cast members who had been silently suffering under Carlos's control suddenly understood they had power, and for the first time in love and marriage Huntsville history, it wasn't in Carlos King's hands. The actual concern, though, is what comes next. If Carlos has been revealed, what does that imply about the show's future? Someone is going to intervene and change things. Will Carlos be obliged to resign, or will he fight back even more to keep control? One thing is certain: this is only starting point.